Welcome back, everyone. I'm Dr. Yasamin Bolourian, the Director of Outreach and Dissemination at the UCLA Tarjan Center, and it's my distinct pleasure to moderate our panel today on employment for people with intellectual and neurodevelopmental disabilities. As we mark National Disability Employment Awareness Month this October, today's panel is especially timely. We know that employment is more than just a paycheck. For people with intellectual and neurodevelopmental disabilities, meaningful employment can help people gain a sense of independence and self sufficiency, develop self confidence, find purpose and belonging, and build connections within the community. Yet opportunities still lag behind the general population. Why? Why is that? Many barriers to employment have been identified for people with intellectual and neurodevelopmental disabilities. We know that hiring processes aren't always accessible. Many supervisors haven't been trained in neuroinclusive practices. Advancement pathways can be limited, and roles don't always match a person's strengths. And unfortunately, stigma around disability and confusion about when and how to disclose keeps many employees quiet. Here at the Tarjan Center, we are making efforts to advance inclusive employment in the workplace and support employees with intellectual and neurodevelopmental disabilities in finding and keeping meaningful work through programs such as Pathway at UCLA Extension, the UCLA Peers for Careers program, and partnerships with state and community agencies. And to bring this to life today, we've invited voices from policy, rehabilitation, business, and lived experience. So thank you to our panelists for being here with us today. As our panelists take a minute to join us, I want to remind our audience that you can send in your questions for our panelists by clicking the button on your Zoom toolbar that says Q&A and type in your questions. We will do our best to get to your questions for our panelists when we get to the discussion portion of the hour. This presentation is being recorded and will be available on the UCLA Tarjan Center website in a few weeks. You can also hear a plain language podcast brief featuring one of our panelists, Aaron Carruthers, and our disability rights advocate, Holly Oliver. The link is posted in the chat. So let's get started. Panelists, I would love for each of you to briefly introduce yourselves and then answer the question, what does employment mean to you and why is it important for people with disabilities? Aaron, why don't you get us started?
Thank you, Dr. Bolourian, and hello, welcome. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here, and hello to everybody who's joining us. Over 300 people. That's fantastic. That's amazing. I'm Aaron Carruthers. I'm the Executive Director of California's State Council on Developmental Disabilities. I'm joining you from Sacramento today, and at the State Council, we disrupt systems. We disrupt them to make them more accountable, more flexible, more responsive to the people they're there to serve. And that certainly is in the realm of employment. I am the child of parents with developmental and other disabilities, a person with disabilities, and a parent of a young man with disabilities. So I know the importance of work. You ask, what does it mean to me? Well, when we, people with disabilities, have access to good jobs, it means independence, means freedom to make our own choices, means the chance to contribute to our community in really meaningful ways that are important to us. Work brings dignity. It brings confidence. It really shows people what we can do and not just what we need. There's something more too. The right to work, it's a core principle of equality. Denying people with disabilities opportunities to work reinforces discrimination, reinforces exclusion. Ensuring access to employment, it's just part of upholding our human and civil rights.
Thank you, Aaron. Carol.
Good morning. I think it's still morning. My name is Carol Asch, and I'm the Deputy Director for the Vocational Rehabilitation Employment Division at the Department of Rehabilitation. And our division includes all of our field offices across California. And I'll be providing some information today about how DOR helps individuals with all types of disabilities to obtain employment. And I also want to thank the UCLA Tarjan Center for inviting me. Employment to me is a game changer. And I think in many contexts, our professions are what define us. So as others have said, work is about purpose, belonging, the opportunity to contribute. It gives us all a sense of identity and connection to our communities. It provides us with independence. It builds confidence, and it allows people to showcase their abilities rather than to be defined by their disabilities. And I believe that when workplaces are inclusive, everyone benefits. Employers gain loyal, motivated workers. Teams actually have been shown to become more creative and empathetic. And I think the entire community becomes stronger. And I think employment is one of the clearest ways to affirm that individuals with disabilities are valued, capable, deserving, and essential to our shared economic and social fabric. So thank you.
Thank you, Carol Asch. Cindy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me on this panel. My name is Cindy Liu, and I am the founder of Luhu's Enterprises. You can get where the name came from. We're a small startup media company, and I'm using storytelling to create jobs as well as change culture. Prior to that, I was consumer brand management at Disney Consumer Products, worked in the video game industry for DreamWorks licensed products. The past 10 years or 13 years since my daughter brought me into the disability community, I've been working in policy and advocacy, managing cortisol belly, along with homeschooling and running a small business, but it has been the joy of my life. Employment to me is very, very personal. When my daughter came home from the NICU, I knew that, or I felt deeply that I had to create something for her, that I was part of the solution to create employment, and she gonna need a job because we're old parents and we really wanted her to have that independence. And so, I think that in the larger context, what employment means is a cultural shift from seeing our community as a burden to a value, to not only an economic value, but a consumer value. And also, I think that everybody, whether you have an disability or not, should have access to the American dream. So the more our community is employed, the more I see that cultural shift.
Thank you, Cindy. Mia.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me on this very special moment. My name is Mia Friedman, and I am the marketing assistant of Rare Beauty and administrative and marketing assistant of Friendship Foundation, which is an organization where you bring people of all ages who have special needs to make friends. And I'm a UCLA Pathway alumni. And what employment means to me is that employment is an opportunity for me to work side by side with other people and to use my skills to make the company better, and an opportunity for independence. It is important for people with disabilities because they would get the chance to be included, to use their skills to do things that they are good at, and to get support from everyone around them to improve the things that are more challenging.
Thank you so much, Mia. And Andrew.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. I am Andrew Black, and I'm a full-time employee in chemical manufacturing. After I took a career break to resolve physical and mental health issues, I was empowered by a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder just last year. And I completed the Neuropipes program this year, where I received hands-on training in employment-related soft skills through Peers for Careers and in biomanufacturing at Texas A&M University. So successful employment, meaningful employment gives me self-confidence, a direction for my skills and interests, and money to do what I love to do. Financial stability, personal development, and independence are critical to me maintaining my mental health. I crave having a purpose and doing something that contributes to society and makes the world a better place. So these are among the reasons that employment is important to people with disabilities of any kind.
Well said, Andrew, and well said to all of our panelists. Thank you so much. Let's build on that, and let's look at ways, um, kind of what gets in the way of employment, right? So, panelists, what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen over the years, and how people with intellectual and neurodevelopmental disabilities are included in the workplace? So, Aaron, I'll start with you again, if you don't mind.
Dr. Bolourian, if it's okay, there are so many barriers. If it's okay, I'd like to go last and maybe fill in some of the gaps, because if I go, I might say everything there is.
Sure, no problem. I appreciate that. Carol, do you mind going?
Sure, no problem. So, I mean, there's the obvious things, right? So honestly, I'll be in recent years, I think one of the most challenging hurdles has been transportation in California. But aside from that, in terms of, actually at the workplace, getting that inclusiveness, I think one of the biggest ongoing challenges I've seen is perception. And that's what I'm talking about, is the lingering kind of stereotypes, and low expectations about what people with intellectual and neurodevelopmental disabilities can do. And I think too often employers underestimate the capabilities that each person can bring to the workplace, or they focus on what supports are needed instead of on the value of these individuals and what they bring, as employees. And I think there needs to be some more flexibility and creativity in hiring practices. We get locked into our duty statements, we get locked into our processes, and we forget that we're not dealing with processes, we're dealing with people. I have found that employers really value and appreciate the training on disability etiquette and sensitivity. And there is a misperception that reasonable accommodations are costly or difficult, but most often that's actually not the case. And one of the ways it's been really effective to address this is through peer-to-peer conversation. So when employers hear from other employers how beneficial it's been to tap into this talent pool, I think they've been more open to hiring individuals with disabilities.
Thank you. Thank you for shedding light on some of the barriers and also talking about some of the creative solutions as well. This is very insightful. Cindy.
Yeah, Carol said, I think, well, I'll have three. Carol mentioned one already, which is the cultural perceptions. Again, in general, seeing our community as a burden instead of a value, and having myths about what it costs to accommodate and shift the workplace. But so I'll touch on the other two a little more in depth. I think, because of my marketing background, I think people don't realize how much money they're leaving on the table. Globally, this is a number that's going to shock you. Globally, it's $13 trillion with a T. 13 trillion. That's as a consumer market, and we have buying power. I think people think if you're disabled, you don't have buying power. We have friends and loved ones, and we also can purchase. So that's a lot of money to leave on the table. And I think they also don't recognize that in addition to the right feel-good things of hiring people in our community, because we are the OG feel good makers, and we do bring the light. But I think that people don't realize the financial value that we add. And I'll just give some numbers, and this is from Accenture. I have to look at my notes. If you hire our community, you get 1.6 times more revenue, 2.6 times more net income, and double the economic profit. Double. So money talks. And so if people are not recognizing our community as a consumer group and a purchasing power, it's a huge miss. And when you do design for our community, you naturally have to hire that point of view to really understand how to design product and market. And I'll just say one last thing, from maybe this is self-serving, but as an entrepreneur, I do think the barriers is working capital. So we need individuals to invest in impact work, which is the return on investment, which I've just listed, but also the social impact of hiring and creating a workforce. So.
Yeah, I very much value the kind of data you brought to the table, Cindy, and kind of talking about this from the lens of an entrepreneur. I think it's very important that we do that when we're speaking with employers as well, right? Kind of talking their language. So thank you. Mia, what are your thoughts on the biggest challenges?
Some of the biggest challenges that I've seen over the years were gaining more computer skills, working with other people, and using more organizational skills. I had to learn these skills to be successful in the workplace because over time, there were some skills on the computer that I didn't know much about, but I had a lot of help, and working with other people has given me more communication and getting to know people to see what they like to do and how they handle things. And being more organized helps me fit in, like helping put things together and in their proper place. And if someone wants help from another team, I'm always willing to help out and lend a hand whenever they need it most.
You sound like a great colleague, Mia. And I absolutely agree. Computer skills and organization skills, especially in this day and age when you kind of can't get away from technology, right? So very, very important pieces to the equation. Andrew, how about you? What are some of the biggest challenges you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, so the biggest challenge in the way that autism manifests in my interaction with others is anxiety and depression. So workplace cultures that tolerate people or managers or bosses that can support people that have mental health difficulties, because they don't conform to traditional social standards or, is probably the biggest one that I see that could extend to other people once you're actually hired. So the other part of my answer is going to be before you're even at the job. Through the hiring process itself. There are a lot of unwritten rules and subtleties that can be difficult for someone like me to understand. It's not just what you know, it's who you know. So the networking, but not just contacting someone, also following up with them, knowing when to follow up with them, how frequently is okay to reach out to contacts, the managing myself as I get frustrated when I get ghosted by people, the people, representative companies that are untrained may not be considerate of they may not act proportionately to the time and effort that an autistic individual has put in to applying to that job. There were times when I had scheduling issues. I had a virtual interview in 45 minutes, and then they told me we can't do it. So that was having that sudden change in routine was extremely stressful. And then I am employed full time now for a few months, but over the course of 2025, I applied to about 250 unique job postings, which resulted in myriad email rejections, numerous phone screenings, virtual interviews, on-site interviews, rescheduled interviews, and finally 2 job offers, one of which I took.
Congratulations. Clearly, all that hard work paid off. And thank you for sharing about some of the mental health concerns that come up. I completely agree. That can't be kind of forgotten in all this. And some of the kind of social nuances too that are hard to pick up on. I think that all of those things are so important. And Aaron.
Dr. Bolourian, if I was going to think of the one biggest barrier that we are seeing in the community, Carol Asch already mentioned it. Interestingly, it's transportation. We're working with individuals who are leaving sub-minimum wage settings and getting jobs, getting paid minimum wage and above. So this is a fantastic progress. There's over 1,100 adults who were earning sub-minimum wage, but we, the state council, along with many others, worked in that policy. People are transitioning, and over 1,100 people who were being in situations that I see as exploitative now earning minimum wage. This is probably the biggest advancement we've seen in employment. When talking with them about the process, what worked, what didn't work, what could happen better, transportation comes up over and over again. It's needed throughout the community, particularly complex and needed within our community. But I said I wanted to go last so I can add something, which is really a lack of representation is a barrier. So when employees with disabilities don't see people like them in leadership roles, it's harder to imagine your own path forward. Representation means you belong here. And how often disability is throughout. It's just throughout. But how often do we hear leaders and employers within the work setting talking about their own disabilities? It's there. And I'm really talking, I'm talking to you, those who don't have visible disabilities, about what it means for you to talk about it as a natural part of the human condition, which it is. When that happens, it gives permission. It gives permission to others to bring them full selves to the job. But it also, when leaders with disabilities are thinking about the workplace from a disability perspective, oftentimes what happens is we start offering accommodations or asking and seeking. Is there anything you need? Rather than waiting to be asked. Just that small change in dynamic, change in orientation on the question changes a whole lot.
Thank you, Aaron, for adding that. I'm hearing so many different themes come up here, from transportation to perceptions and kind of workplace culture, gaining relevant workplace skills, mental health, and again, social nuances, lack of representation. These are all really important kind of barriers that we need to be, working towards to address. So thank you, everyone, for elevating all of those issues. I want to take a minute and look at what systems and workplaces can do. So starting with our statewide partners, Aaron and Carol, how do the State Council and the Department of Rehabilitation work with employers and communities to support people with disabilities in finding and keeping meaningful employment? Aaron, Carol, who wants to go first?
Sure. So at the State Council on Developmental Disabilities, I told you we were disruptors. And there's three main ways that we disrupt around employment. First is, I'm a director of a state department, but we're independent and we can seek authors to change laws. So we sponsor and co-sponsor legislation. And one of them I just mentioned, ending subminimum wage. And we're so grateful for the strong leadership and partnership that the Department of Rehabilitation and others had in implementing this legislation. Before that, worked on legislation that California is an employment first state. So everybody with a developmental disability begins with the belief that work is what somebody wants. And that's what all systems are supporting toward to the best of someone's ability. So change the laws first. Second is we issue grants. We do have a small amount of money that the council can give out for new ideas, develop new practices. A couple of these that we've done is worked with a network within the San Francisco Bay Area to work with over 100 employers to change their hiring practices to make them more inclusive of people with disabilities. Another one was to look at how employment services are provided and test and validate that the practice of discovery leads to better outcomes. What that means is if I talk to you and find out what do you want to do and find a job match that's close to your interest, you're likely going to succeed or have better outcomes than if I just plugged you wherever I have an opportunity. Well, that's common sense, that's human sense, and now we have it validated that it's true. So change the law, grants, and then third way is local help. We have offices throughout California. I'm in Sacramento, but our closest to you there is in Glendale, serving the Los Angeles area. And the great team in that office can work with people individually about their situation, provide them information, provide them resources, and give them supports in their employment journey.
I love this three-pronged approach, Aaron, to being a disruptor. That's awesome. Carol.
Thank you, Aaron. And, the State Council and the Department of Rehabilitation really have built a strong partnership around some of these shared goals. And I really appreciate the local level and state level partnership with you. The Department of Rehabilitation, I would say we play a crucial role in education. And by that, I mean helping communities and businesses understand the benefits of hiring people with disabilities. So we provide individualized services directly to people with disabilities of all kinds. So we provide some of them include job coaching and placement, and that includes customized employment. We really value a coordinated and person-centered approach where we have collaboration with the community partners and with our service providers, because we can't do it alone. I mean, we really depend on our communities. And at the local level, DOR partners with the school districts, adult education, community colleges, with county mental health programs and county offices of education. We're also members of all of the workforce development boards across the state, and we are part of the workforce system. We collaborate with the Employment Development Department and the America's Job Centers of California. And of course, we work directly with employers in both the public and private sector to identify, first of all, we have to identify their needs, right? And then find ways to increase meaningful employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities that we serve. So we really try to increase employer awareness also of the benefits of hiring individuals with disabilities. And I appreciate, Cindy bringing up the Accenture study, because I think it's really important for us to look at all aspects of that, including the financial benefits to employers. So those are just some of them. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you both for all the work that you do for our community and at the state level. And I kind of, you mentioned Sydney. Cindy, I want to hear maybe from your perspective as an entrepreneur, as well as an advocate and parent, what have you found actually works to help people get and keep meaningful work?
Well, for me, I boiled it down to three things. I think adding it into your value system, which for me, it was easy to do because I come with a mama's heart. But I also think if it's not in your value system in that way, you can do targeted recruiting and actively seek out individuals with disabilities and those points of view. Again, if you're with a company or a small business and you want to design a product or something consumable, you need to know that consumer group. So hiring people on your team to have that point of view is really, really important. So I would say targeted recruiting is the number one thing. With that, the other thing that I learned is creating jobs around projects. And that kind of works in storytelling and social media and documentaries and that kind of medium, the kind of medium that I'm teeny tiny in right now. But it helps because what I know from my own daughter is that she might not be able to work 40 hours a week in a typical way that we can, but with projects, you can set an expectation and a timeline and help craft the work that needs to be done along the way. And the supports along the way can be more easily sort of layered on, is what I've felt. So targeted recruiting and finding ways to create projects. And then, I just wanted to share also with that, Andrew talked about workplace culture, and I think that is really, really important. Again, if it's embedded in your value system and you have the project set out. I have been able to hire and sustain 3 individuals with disabilities through the work. And it's, we're starting, but we're small but mighty and making an impact. And with other projects, I've hired 6 people. So going back to problem number 3, we need a little more working capital in that area. But I think asking up front and having the conversation and making people feel safe to talk about how they can be supported. And as Erin mentioned, opening the door to that conversation and leadership by sharing, I have a child with a disability. I kind of know, but tell me what you might need. So those 3 things.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love the idea of, transparency and really just talking about different abilities. I think that's so important. And you've mentioned, creative jobs, creative solutions have come up before. And so, I'm wondering, just as a follow-up question, um, what sort of industries do you kind of see that happening in, where you're able to kind of create jobs around projects? Are there certain industries, and this is a question to Cindy or others, where you're able to see this kind of come to life?
I was gonna wait because I was just yammering, but so I'll speak from my experience really quickly. I love food and cooking, and when I started, I've learned a lot through making mistakes, but being able to pivot. And for me, it's very hard to do project based if you're in a cafe. Because when people order, you can't have that extended timeline. And also, personally, my daughter really doesn't care if you're enjoying your food or drink. Um, so with creation and art, you can have, I've found, a little more flexible schedule, but I'll let other people. That's just my experience.
I mean, I appreciate you just adding an example of that, because I think sometimes these ideas can sound really great, but then the application is where the disconnect is. So thank you for just sharing that example in the moment. Um, Mia and Andrew, you both have found success in finding employment. So my question to you is, if someone who is starting to look for work tomorrow asked you for advice, what would you tell them to focus on based on what you did? So Mia, if you don't mind going first.
Sure. So my advice would be, when you're looking for a job but- but that gives you an opportunity, use your greatest strength and it will help you and your team. Like, for example, if at home, if there's something that you like to do, like be a calligrapher, or you like to cook or bake or play an instrument, and give a little sample of what you like to do, and they'll find ways to use it. Like, another example is that over time, I use my calligraphy to write envelopes for weddings and for dear friends and family members. And when I gave out samples to both of my jobs, they found ways for me to use it, like to write and welcome cards to new recruits and company name cards for if they're going on business trips, and write addresses for donators, and cards to influencers who are interested in our cosmetics of rare beauty and things like that. So if there's something that you really, really enjoy doing, you should embrace your greatest strength, and it will make your job and your company line an even better place.
Such great advice. And I learned so much about you right now, Mia. Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
Andrew, how about you? What's advice that you would give?
Yeah. So what I've done recently is I looked for vocational training or education opportunities, and I found several through state agencies that support people with autism. And from there, I was connected, with I would get a mentor or a paid advisor that has on-demand availability to answer quick questions, help break mental blocks, and do more than just meet once a week for an hour. I mean, there are some online services where they'll connect you with someone, but it's kind of like on a fixed schedule. I found having that, maybe even just like a 5 minute meeting, or just maybe it ends up being 17 minutes, critical to helping me manage the moment to moment doubts, and provide quick feedback. And then also I would make a spreadsheet or some sort of tracker for organization and visualization. What I did is I set a specific goal of a number of job applications per week, and that helped keep me on track with that. And then I would also join professional organizations that are related to interests of yours, so you can attend events, and network from there. And then most of all, believe in yourself and that all this hard work you've done and you've put in has value, both to yourself and to others.
Really great strategies. I love this idea of kind of having a peer mentor, coach, and um, identifying specific goals for yourself and meeting those goals on a regular basis, utilizing kind of networking opportunities. These are wonderful strategies to share. Thank you. Um, this next question is for all of our panelists. So, kind of looking ahead, what gives you the most hope about the future of employment for people with disabilities? Aaron?
Yeah, I have a lot of hope and a lot of excitement. The biggest piece of hope is a cultural shift that we couldn't have created if we tried. Right now, people want to work and they expect to work. And there is actually like a generational age demarcation of who holds this view. At the state council, we do our work by asking the community, what do you want us working on? And we do this every 5 years. And we've been doing it for 55, 60 years. So we can see the changes and answers over time. And about 10 years ago, before 10 years ago, the answer was always like, help me get and keep my benefits. Then about 10 years ago, there's a sudden shift where employment shot up to the #1 answer. And it stayed. First, we saw it among adults with disabilities, and we saw it among family members. Again, that's the priority. Well, what caused this? I think it's the integration generation. So those students who were in K through 12 classrooms with students of all abilities, all disabilities, grew up with just disability as part of our experience. And if I'm a person with significant disabilities, I still expect to be where everybody else is. Now, those kids, and it's kind of like 35 and younger, they're adults, they have children of their own. Their values, their expectations, their beliefs about their children's possibilities are different. Those who aren't, maybe don't have a family member are just used to it. Those who do have a disabilities were included, they expect it. This is the most hopeful, exciting thing I can think about the future of employment.
So you got a lot of head nods from your fellow panelists, and I'm sure from the audience as well. Thank you, Aaron. Carol?
I agree with Aaron, and I, in my conversations with young people, with Gen Z folks, when they talk about disability in a different language, it's just part of life. It's just part of the human experience. But what really what really motivates me and inspires me is I love hearing about success stories and seeing the resilience and perseverance that individuals with disabilities have shown. And what gives me the most hope is that same thing. It's the shift in the mindset. More and more employers are actually coming to us. Community leaders are beginning to see they're beginning to see inclusion as not as an obligation, really, but more as an opportunity. But we're having businesses come to us seeking out diverse talent and recognizing that people with, specifically with intellectual and developmental disabilities, they bring creativity, reliability, and fresh perspectives to the workplace. And that's what employers are looking for. They're looking for that creativity. I also think technology and remote options are expanding access in ways that weren't possible a decade ago. And I am inspired by the leadership of self-advocates, people who are speaking up. They're leading initiatives, making their voices heard. And I'm hopeful that in the future, I think employment and hiring needs to be more flexible and more creative. And I see that happening. The labor market is changing really, really quickly. Probably faster than we can train our staff in all of the changes, because it's very the pace of change in technology is pretty amazing, and it's scary, but it also brings me a lot of hope. So if you look at the proliferation of the gig economy, jobs in content creation and influencing, AI and other types of technology, all of those, while they're really disruptive, they also offer I would say new options for accessibility and new options for employment in realms that we actually haven't even thought about yet. So it's very exciting.
Yes, absolutely. Cindy, how about you?
Well, dang, Aaron and Carol were so good. They took um I'm very, very encouraged by how, and I use this word intentionally, how powerful our community is. We have organizing power, we have advocacy power, we have creative power, we have purchasing power, and all of that makes a huge difference. And our history is still relatively young. It's only roughly 50 years old. So I'm very encouraged by how that has changed culture so far in terms of raising expectations, how our community has spoken about what we expect to be included and the accessibility and all the technology. I think I'm most encouraged by there's no shortage of talent in creating jobs and finding people to fill them. So
Absolutely. Thank you. Mia.
From what I experienced, there are more companies now across different industries who are giving jobs to people with disabilities and giving them a chance. For me, my hope for the future is that people with different job interests will now have job opportunities that focus on those interests and allow them to show their strengths. And that's what I hope for the future, that there's lots of people who are looking for jobs that would suit them better, people that will fit in with their surroundings and people that they can rely on. And the more that they search for a job that suits them, they'll feel right at home and they will embrace it and encourage those to search as well.
Absolutely. Job fit, jobs that match people's strengths and skills and interests. Yes. And Andrew, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, so giving me hope for the future of employment is the ongoing development of specialized programs that enable people to get employed. So one of the programs I participated in was Neuropipes, which was an extension of the Peers for Careers programs. But just generally other programs that go over relevant issues, teach specific skills, and for me to learning having specific examples was key, so because generalized advice may be misinterpreted, not taken up well by my mind. So vocational training programs that are very goal oriented, have include practical experience that give mentors or advisors or coaches. Yeah, and then also the development of technology, like having virtual meetings. I don't personally, before I was diagnosed with autism, I didn't personally know anyone that openly said that they were autistic. So I was able to use virtual, Zoom calls to meet people that, would validate my experiences and maybe understand the issues they went through. And then when I did the Neuropace program, I spent 2 weeks with about 8 other people, my peers that were autistic, and that was incredible and life-changing.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning the Neuropipes program, Andrew. We've actually heard a lot about your participation and how phenomenal you were in it too. So maybe our team can drop the link in the chat so that our audience can kind of learn a little bit more about Neuropipes as well. But I agree, specialized programs and ones that focus on employment are so important. So thank you, and thank you to all of our panelists for your answers to these questions. I'd like to open it up to some of the questions that we received from the audience. We have over 12 questions here on this list, so I'll try to choose wisely. Maybe to start us off, for all our panelists, for people who want to be allies, what's one thing we can do to make workplaces more inclusive? So for anyone who wants to take this question. what's one thing that we can do to make workplaces more inclusive?
I'll go. The understanding and giving grace to people that, that if they don't react immediately the way that you expect, they may still be thinking about it, or they may not know what to say. So sometimes when people tell a joke to me, I get that it's funny or whatever, but I don't necessarily display it for about a second. And so, because most humans read micro expressions within the first few milliseconds of reading them, it gets awkward. But and that oftentimes not only happens when I'm very tired, but also, just that idea of giving grace and understanding or being patient.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have different processing speeds, right? And just makes us what it makes us human. So giving grace, I love that. Any other thoughts from our panelists on this question? What's one thing we can do to make workplaces more inclusive?
Well, I have something I would say as more as an employer than as an ally, but in general, play to people's strengths. Everyone brings their unique strengths to the job and makes it their own. I mean, that's only possible if employers can actually pay attention. What do people love doing and what are they really good at doing? And just put them in situations where they can really shine. And where they can show how much they're really needed for part of to be part of the team. So I would say that. I always like to play to people's strengths and get to know them and understand what makes them tick, and maximize their potential in the workplace.
Absolutely.
I would say also find a champion in the company. A lot of the companies like Walgreens are started. I'm a parent, so maybe this is my bias, but the Walgreens program was started by a father. There is a personal experience that everyone has that they may not quite identify as connection with the disability community. But if an organization has yet to, then they're certainly missing out. But I think find a champion within, and it's really not that hard.
I'm in a unique position of both being an employee, skilled worker with disabilities, but also an employer, someone who hires. And that position of being an employer is a position of privilege because I can exercise different flexibilities that are there. They're available to everybody, but they may not be thought about by others. But as I mentioned before, just simply offering. Is there anything you need? Offering up front. Don't wait to be asked. If you really want to get advanced, you can actually do a walkthrough of your workspace. Is this accessible? I had one place, our offices had a restroom. Get this. When I got this job, the offices were in an older building, and the restrooms had a foot pedal flushing mechanism for the toilet. Who in the world even invented that to begin with, let alone thought that's where we should house our offices? I mean, just basic things. Are the hallways wide enough? Just walk through with an awareness beyond your own needs to others.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We're not in those offices anymore.
Yeah. I was afraid to ask. Okay, so our next question from the audience is, what would be your suggestion for parents of younger kids? So AI has changed a lot in the job market. I'm also a parent of an ADHDer and independent living in DBR counsel, so I understand challenges coming from state and parent sides. But, what would be some of the suggestions for parents of younger kids?
I can chime in, and I do have family members with intellectual and developmental and mental health disabilities. So I would say this: make sure that you give them work, give them chores, have expectations, and ask them what they want to do. Ask them what they like, what they want to be when they grow up. Start talking about employment early on, and with the expectation that they can and will find employment.
Such a good point, and that's even reflected in research, Carol, that parent expectations is one of the strongest predictors of success in adulthood. Very good point.
Not to
Any other suggestions? Yeah.
Well, not to put me and Andrew on the spot. I'm curious how your parents cultivated your desires to be employed.
Oh, you're talking to me. By being very flexible, to and open to doing what I wanted to do. I mean, I could be someone who delivered flowers, or I could be a scientist who won a Nobel Prize in chemistry, if I wanted to. They loved me unconditionally. I mean, I guess getting further back in my history, as a child, developing as a child, getting the right child psychologist was impossible. So I'm not sure that might be better nowadays with having child psychologists. So I wasn't officially diagnosed with autism until last year, um, because, and we suspected maybe I had something, what was then called Asperger's syndrome, because of social development issues. Like I was a late walker, I was a late talker, but I absolutely dominated in the academic world of schooling. I mean, I got straight A's, A pluses, 100. Maybe I got higher than 100 in some courses because I got the bonus questions correct or something like that. Um, but then that also came at the expense of I just spent time doing homework and not socializing with other people. And so because I did so well in school, most doctors that would see people with autism or ADHD, they had people that would struggle in school. And so they would come up with advice, and we're telling you, no, I am doing really well in those things. It's the social aspect and stuff like that. And so my parents went through a lot of programs, traditional therapies, untraditional therapies. They went to bat for me. I had a bit of a non-traditional experience. I mean, I never had an IEP or anything like that. But in high school, I got really, really sick for a while, and so that required negotiating with my school district, still allowing me to graduate so I could go to college. And then once I got to college, I socially developed extremely well, and getting that independence. So that was a big worry, um, of how I would handle that. But my parents were always there about an hour away, and I um, talked to my mom the first year of college. I talked to my mom every single day, and she supported me through that. So they were huge. I would not be here today in the shape that I am without my parents. Um, you know, Absolutely being a champion for me, um, and doing everything possible, that they could.
Very moving. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I didn't know if you have anything you wanted to add to that, any suggestions for parents of younger kids.
Well, considering that I work for Friendship Foundation, that over time there have been a lot of kids who have special needs. Like, for example, they have a hard time making friends and meeting new people and communicating. Like, for example, well, one of my brothers and a friend of his brought me and this girl about my age to become friends with each other. And when I first met her, she was shy and she wasn't very talkative, but then over time she changed and we started to develop more communication. And when I told her about Friendship Foundation, where they can help people make friends, she wasn't sure about it at first, but then when I asked her to come just for one day, she went in there and soon she became a total different person, and she started to make friends and she started to develop more communication. And that's all that's the purpose of Friendship Foundation. And to those with young kids, older and younger, to make friends and communicate and do any fun activity together. That way they won't be so alone in a world where they don't know where to find or make friends.
Sounds like a wonderful opportunity. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the time. We have so many great questions in the chat. But in the spirit of National Disability Employment Awareness Month, what's maybe one action or mindset shift that you hope people take away from today's conversation? Erin, would you like to go first?
If I can just take everything that was just discussed and put it in a tiny little snippet, a little soundbite, maybe even a little capsule, just take it down and everybody just integrate and incorporate it into their own practices and their own lives. But you asked for just simply about respect for people, respect for talents. I really appreciated the comment that said, you know, it takes a certain kind of leader to recognize and identify the skills and strengths of different team members. That's about respect. It's about individualization. And when it comes to working with skilled talent with disabilities, individualization is, what are your individual needs to succeed in this role? And what are your individual strengths that are going to shine in this role? So respect for individuals and allowing that individualization process to come through.
Absolutely. Thank you. Carol?
I would say take the time to get to know people. Take the time to learn what they have to offer. If you're an employer, you know, think outside the box in terms of the hiring, process, and find ways to give people the opportunity to be their best and to demonstrate how much they can do.
That's great. Thank you. Cindy?
I would say you're missing out. I mean, financially, emotionally, it's not only the smart thing to do, it's the right thing to do. So don't miss out.
That should be the slogan. You're missing out. I like it.
I think that.
Yeah. Mia?
So if you any job that you've taken a journey from your very first internship to a job that you are looking for, I would say take what you've learned from your first job and take it with you to your next job and to the next, to whatever job that you fit in with. That way you'll never forget what you've learned from your very first internship.
Really building on those experiences. It's great.
Mhm.
Thank you. Andrew, how about you?
Keep iteratively improving, and keep learning from your previous experiences of what you liked and you didn't like, and know that things will eventually get better if you keep good effort at it.
And I think that applies both for employees and employers, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for sharing your time, experience, and insights with us today. Your perspectives from policy and advocacy to lived experiences and family support have really given us a fuller picture of both the progress that we've made and also the work that's still ahead to advance inclusive employment. So grateful for the honesty and expertise and hope that you brought to this discussion. I want to give a reminder that each presentation is being recorded and will be available at the UCLA Tarjan Center website in a few weeks. You can also hear a plain language podcast brief featuring Aaron Carruthers and our disability rights advocate, Holly Oliver, on Spotify. The link to these session materials is posted in the chat. But before we wrap, I do want to offer one simple way for those of you in our audience to help with kind of closing the employment gap for people with intellectual and neurodevelopmental disabilities. At the UCLA Tarjan Center, we are building a network to support neurodivergent job seekers. The network includes people who are willing to get involved and support this effort in a variety of ways, whether they're open to giving resume feedback to job seekers, doing a brief informational or mock interview, sharing job postings, or exploring internships or hiring opportunities at their workplace. So if you're interested in supporting job seekers with intellectual and neurodevelopmental disabilities in any way, please click on the link in the chat and consider completing our 1-minute interest form. When you complete this form, a Tarjan team member may reach out to you to invite you to have a short conversation about our employment efforts and some of the ways that you can get involved. I can assure you that your responses will be used only by the UCLA Tarjan Center to follow up about inclusive employment. We will not share your responses with anyone outside our team or use it for any other purpose. So thank you for considering, for helping us to kind of move this work forward. And thank you again for your engagement in this panel session. With that, let's now take a 1-hour lunch break from 11:45 to 12:45 p.m. Pacific. When we return, we will hear from Dr. Kathy Lord, the UCLA Tarjan Center faculty, and George Tarjan Distinguished Professor of Psychiatry in the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA, who will be presenting her featured presentation on a positive but realistic approach to autism from 2 to 34. Enjoy your lunch, and we will see you back at 12:45. Thanks all.